Good evening and welcome back to another conversation as part of Within Arm's Reach. My guest today, her name is Raga Olga de Silva. She's the director of a company called Speaking Minds. She is an author, and the reason that I thought of requesting her to come and talk to us about RIP labels, which is whichever way, whether you look at it as let's kill these labels or let's rip them off. Her book Untold Lies, which was launched in September last year by Dr. Shafi Tharoor, is about her own journey and how she has overcome many challenges that life posed for her. One of the biggest challenges being fighting the many labels that were given to her, fighting judgment. She's also now a diversity speaker. She's spoken at several literary fests around the country and at Barkha We the Women. So, hi Raga.
Hey, so lovely to be here. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you too for agreeing. I couldn't have thought of a better person, a more lively and well-informed person who has lived this story to talk about this, right?
So thank you, for having me, thinking of me, and thank you to all your wonderful friends. You can see you have so many fans, Deepika. Look at that.
I don't know about fans, but they're all, what's really exciting me is that all of them are really interested in participating in this conversation. I've received so many responses from people saying that this is a great topic. So Raga, I was just telling all our viewers here about Untold Lies. So Raga writes in two formats, one as stories and the other as story poems, which are stories as poems. The one story, the story Selfish, it struck me as something that you may have carried through your life. And I was very curious to know how that one label given to you by the closest people in your life impacted the rest of your life.
Okay, before we start, can I ask you, when you see me on screen, describe, or when you just describe me, how would you describe?
Lively, vivacious, smiling, attractive. I told you when we did our test that I'm loving the way the hair is growing out. It's so cool. And striking. I mean, your white glasses and everything. Very, very striking.
Fantastic. Thank you for saying such nice and kind words. And, my question, the reason I asked you this question is how we describe a person is the labels we give them. So if somebody called me, say, then I'll come back to this book that you talked about, right?
Yes.
The story called Selfish in my book. So when I was 6 years old, we had no food in the house. There was just very quickly to give you context. So there's no food in the house, 6 years old, two other siblings, no money, no food in the house. Mom comes home with a slice of bread. Mom pretends she's full. The older brother says, I have just eaten. The older sister says, I have a tummy ache. So that slice of bread is left for the child, the youngest sibling. The mothers, everybody says, you eat it. Now their intent is very pure. They want the child, the youngest, to not go hungry again for the third day. So they give it, the child doesn't know what to do. She wants to now share that with everybody, but nobody is willing to take that. So she starts eating it. And I still remember that moment, Deepika. I remember eating it, not knowing what to do because I was so uncomfortable with that thought. And that moment, I remember my siblings looked at each other and said, so selfish. Okay. And that tag stayed with me forever. So it's a tag that people give you when they feel that they cannot give you anything else. And that tag stays with you. And forever, ever, ever, I thought every time I did something for someone or I was, I was able to give something to someone, I thought they would term me as selfish. And I lived that tag. And so we live tags, we live labels, we live in boxes. By your boxes, you confine me in, and the boxes I confine you in. And then I confine myself in those boxes.
I met you at a much later stage in your life, which is 2-3 years ago. And you struck me as someone who is very confident, well-spoken, well-read. And, while I'm sure that we are all work in progress, how did you overcome this label? And how did you take your space?
Well, taking your space and overcoming labels are two different things. We never overcome labels, right? We create more labels. We continuously create more labels. Today, you've given me few new things to think about. You called me vivacious. I've never been called vivacious. So that's a label I got, right? And then there are 20 people listening in and they'll say, oh, she's vivacious. So you give me a new label. So we don't really, we accumulate labels. It's only when you sit and you really reflect upon life, things, life throws you challenges. You reflect upon those challenges. That's when you say, actually, this doesn't apply to me anymore. Because you've labeled yourself also through the life. I've told myself, oh, I used to tell myself, I'm so dumb. This was a thing I used to tell myself all the time. You know why? Because
Why?
even today, when I have to do 5 plus 3, I can't do it. I have to 5, 6, 7, 8.
Join the club.
So, because I'm not the definition of anybody else's mathematician, I call myself dumb. So you label yourself more so. But you will reach a point in life when you stop labeling yourself in the negative. Leave it to the others and don't take on the negative labels of others either. And I'm going to actually say what is true for me right now. We spoke about diversity.
Right.
So for
Yeah.
instance, you're so gay
Hmm.
is not a positive label. I consider my sexual identity as being from the LGBT community because I am with a woman. But when somebody says you're so gay or he's so gay or she's so homo, they're actually not saying it they're insulting you. Then you live those insults for a long time, and that causes you fear, it causes you shame, and then you put yourself in a little box and hide away your true personality unless you're very mature and say that this is not me.
Raga, you've lived across 3 countries. You hold a UK passport, an Indian passport, and a New Zealand
New
passport.
Zealand.
Maybe we should take our viewers through your life's journey very
Sure.
briefly. Would you be able to do that so that they'll have some
Wow.
context?
I've lived a long life, you can see from my grace, but I will keep it like I'll pretend I'm only 5 years old. So my first year, I was like, I'll actually talk about my 30 years, 30
Right.
years onwards. So married, I was married with 2 kids, twins. I have twins who are now 22 years old. And after my marriage broke, I decided that I wanted to make different choices in life. And the choice that I made was to be with a woman. And I've been with my partner now for over 13 years. And I made that choice when I was in New Zealand. So that
Right.
choice created a huge amount of ridicule, abuse, as you can imagine, although I lived in New Zealand, amongst my family, amongst my friends, and people who didn't even know me, the general society. So I went away, I hid basically in a closet, and I lived my life very, very privately, Deepika,
Okay.
until I wrote that book, Untold Lies. The book came out, and suddenly people said, it's okay to be who you are, and they supported me. And
Right.
some have ghosted me, as I said the other day as well. But that's okay. I don't need them in my life. So that's my
Right.
life in a nutshell. But through that, I have been an entrepreneur, as Deepika said. I run a business called Speaking Minds, and I write a lot. I write poetry. I've got my second book that's now going to be published soon. I'm writing for a film that's going to be released hopefully in the next 2, 3 years. So there's lots of other things that I also do, and I'm very high energy. I can't sit for
Yes.
too long.
Yes. Raga, how different was it living your story in a place like New Zealand, in a place like the UK, and in a place like India? What were some of the differences?
Very different. Let me say that when I was in New Zealand was a time that was about 15 years ago when I actually came out as a gay woman, right? And it was very difficult at that time because 18, 20 years ago, this was still not acceptable in our Indian community in New Zealand. The
Right.
general public were okay. They couldn't see a married woman with 2 kids suddenly not being with a man but wanting to be with a woman. I think society kind of reacts to you in a manner sometimes because they don't understand, right? So that was one part of it. The second part was is when I started doing business with India, I had to hide because there was no way I was going to tell people. And people told me, don't tell anyone that you are in a relationship with a woman. In fact, I'm just going to tell you that these 2 nose pins that I have, people said to me,
Huh.
don't have nose pins, don't have tattoos, don't cut your hair short, don't everything. Because 15 years ago, this was not that easily acceptable. It has changed. So that is how behind India is and was at that time. UK, very easy, no discrimination. That's also because I've accepted myself. I don't judge myself. So, when you accept yourself, the confidence that you bring is very different to the 18-year-old Raga. I was very different. So
Right.
society changed, I think, as I changed as well.
From your own experience, Raga, like you said, there are people who think it could impact business if you make choices that are hugely different from what society considers normal. Is Has it impacted your work, your life, your children's life?
We have to talk in this in past and the present. The
Right.
present is so different for me. I think the business has not been impacted. In fact, if anything, people love me for who I am. So I think I get more business. Like
Mm-hmm.
last night, I got a call. They talked about somebody else, a celebrity, and halfway through the conversation said, "Actually, I'm so happy that I'm getting a chance to talk to you." So that person
Right.
said, like it was like, "Oh wow, why me?" But
Right.
the present is very different to the past. In the
Right.
past, yes, everything got impacted. I was going to be made the director of a very large agency in New Zealand, and slowly I found things changing for me. So
Mm-hmm.
my sexual orientation impacted how the corporate thought about me. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back 18 years ago. That wouldn't happen right now. In India, it's a very
Right.
different story. In the UK, of course, there is no reason to worry about that. But
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
somebody's asking lots of
Uh,
questions.
yes. What do you think made this shift in the eyes of people? That's Jairam and Shobna.
Hi, Jairam and Shobna. It's a very good question. Like I said, all my life I judged myself. And when you start living those labels, eventually you come to a point you say, this is not the person that I was told I was. And you stop
Mm-hmm.
judging yourself. The moment you stop judging yourself, people around you hesitate to judge you. And that is the day you take the courage to say, I will live my life the way I should be living my life for me, for my family, not for the world. The world doesn't exist. We are the world anyway.
Also, Raga, could you share with our viewers about your family setup today?
The world is my family, but I will come to my close family. So I have a
Yes.
female partner, Nicola. We raised two children who are now 22. We have a son and a daughter. They have a father who lives in India. And so we co-parented. So
Mm-hmm.
two mothers and a father, as I said the other day as well. I think my children have won a lottery because they get love from three parents, and what kind of love they get.
Right.
Our family dynamics are very interesting. We are very liberal in the way we think. We don't judge. We don't have prejudices that a lot of people carry. We allow the children to be. We give them the freedom to be, and the choices they make,
Mm-hmm.
they know are right for them because they face the consequences of those choices, and we allow
Right.
that.
Okay. We have another question. How can we overcome judging ourselves?
Krish, it's a very good question. Krish, we are our biggest enemies. Nobody else is as big an enemy as we are to ourselves. So what we have to do is we have to learn to look at all the good things we have. All of us, each one of us has so many good things in us. And the judgment is about what people have told us about us or what we think people perceive us to be. So we have to stop believing in that. We only have to learn to believe in ourselves. That's how you stop judging yourself. Don't think of yourself as, oh, that person, this person, selfish, all those negative derivatives we don't need in our life. Only positive. Magic. I use the word magic.
Okay. Raga, can you give us some examples so that maybe our viewers can better understand of how some of the labels obstructed your growth and how you would have worked over them? If you can take a few examples from your life and share.
I've been very fortunate in that manner that although I have lived many labels, my
Hmm.
biggest label was that I saw myself as a gay woman and I thought society didn't accept me. So
Hmm.
anything associated with that, I ran away from. So I
Hmm.
would just pretend. If somebody came to me and said, "Oh, there's a guy who wants to date you or he really likes you," I never really bothered saying I was not interested. Not that I
Hmm.
showed any interest, but I let those comments pass. I let
Okay.
a lot of men used to come to me. I mean, I'm a certain kind of personality, and men would say things like, oh, if they got to know, first of all, they would try to hit on you, and if you
Hmm.
didn't show any interest, or either you were like a certain kind of person, and they would label you. But
Hmm.
mostly, if they got to know that I was not interested in them because of my sexual orientation, they would
Hmm.
immediately say, "Oh, you haven't met the right man," right? And those kind of like, I am the one, I'm putting my hand up, I'm going to convert you, that kind of this male ego that used to come through. So the way
Right.
I handle these kind of situations is by sometimes closing myself.
Mm-hmm.
I did have my own prejudices against such egotistical men. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was very difficult to overcome because I would see them in a day-to-day environment, sometimes
Right.
in your work scene, sometimes in your friend circle, people
Right.
also who would put down the gay community. You say, "Arey kya yaar, kya gay hai? ये देख homo आया अपने पास." They would put on, they would make comments which were
Hmm.
so uncomfortable for me as a person, even as a person, whether I was gay or not, that you kind of, instead of standing up for your community and yourself, I used to hide. So to overcome
Mm-hmm.
that takes a lot of time and courage. I
Right.
wish I, I wish I was this person 20 years ago.
Okay. Was there any one incident that prompted you to pick up the courage to overcome them?
No, there is no one incident, Deepika. There were hundreds of incidents that happen over time that basically make you this person that you are. Before we become this person, we actually unbecome the person, right? So this thing falls. You can't see it, but every bit of me had fallen. Then every
Hmm.
bit of me I pieced together little by little by little and then became this person. And the new
Right.
person that I became is the person I've become that I wanted to be. Okay, so many instances. I was in New Zealand. I was basically, there were times when my car would be broken into, the words lesbian would be written on top of the car. And understand, I was in a very senior position in New Zealand in a job. I
Hmm.
had really good standing in the community. I used to get awarded all the time, but secretly, when I was asleep, people would come and do that to my car. People would say very horrible things. My friends who would allow my children to have sleepovers, those sleepovers have
Right.
stopped for a long time. So things
Okay.
happen. My own mother, who couldn't understand that how could she be this person, nearly tried to kill me one night. She said, "I'd rather you not live than live this life and put us through the stigma and the scandal." Because it is a stigma for people, right? When they don't understand. So that's a lot of
Right.
stuff that you have to deal with before you become this person, before you unlearn what you've learned.
And you have to be willing to make that uncomfortable journey through it. I'm sure there were many moments of discomfort through that journey, right?
Very. And I'm sorry I'm not able to give you any direct answers or stories because honestly,
No, no,
these
that's, yeah,
18 years,
yeah.
Deepika, they're so buried inside me. I don't want to bring them out. I've made
Right.
peace with it. It's like, when
Right.
you lose something, you grieve, then you
Yes.
bury it, and then you say, this is a loss, it's over, now I don't want to worry about it. I've
Hmm.
done that. Stories that are never going to be told ever again.
Right. And stories that hopefully no one will have to experience or no one will have to tell, even going forward. We have a comment by Lakshmi Rajaram. Not judging ourselves also means living ourselves even more, isn't it?
Yes.
That's when we heal from our past wounds, she says.
Absolutely, absolutely. You heal from loving yourself. You love yourself when you
Hmm.
healed.
We have lots of comments. Nick's going global. Is that Nicola?
Yes.
Raga, what would you say to a young person who is maybe bullied or has parents that don't understand? So many of these youngsters take their own lives because they can't see a way out.
You know, thank you, Nicola, for asking me a very difficult question. But what we all require, whatever age we are, whether we are young people or not young or not or old or whatever, we require love and we require support and
Mm-hmm.
we require acceptance. So if only people around in our, in our universe, in our ecosystem, which is mostly our parents or our siblings, if only they understood this. So for me, the first thing I would do if I was to relive my life and I was to go back 30 years ago and I was a 20-year-old, I
Mm-hmm.
would want to take my family into confidence and explain to them and expose them to stories like mine and say it is
Right.
okay. Because where does the issue come from? The concern
Mm-hmm.
comes from a parent being worried that the child will not have a normal life, right? Whatever that normal means. So
Right.
once your parents understand that, Nick's going global, I think that is the support you require. Nothing happens overnight. It takes time. But I know lots of families, young people who have beautiful support from their families. I also know of families, you must have heard about this girl Anjana who,
Yes.
killed herself just recently
Yeah.
because her family didn't accept her. Her family did not understand this.
Lakshmi Rajaram has a question. How long were you in a shell going through these labels? What support did you seek to help come out?
Uh, Lakshmi, the interesting part is it took me a long time, at least 15 years. But it didn't mean that I fully lived in a shell. My close set of family, my close set of friends were aware and they were very accepting. But to the outside world, to society who always judged, always said things, I chose not to share my life publicly. So that is what. There were I think over time, it took a long time, like, sorry, I'm just going to come back to another point where a lot of
Yes,
people
yes,
have talked
please.
about me and my ex-husband. They say, oh, how
Hmm.
wonderful he accepted you and how unconditional love. Absolutely. But that takes a long time. That doesn't happen overnight. Any relationship that ends, first you have to go through that pain, those
Right.
conflicts, that drama, that fight, and that in itself is a takes time. Then you go through this new thing, saying, okay, now my ex-wife is actually with a woman. That is not so easy. There was huge amount of drama for many years. It's only
Right.
now, lately, we are the best of friends. We care for each other. We look after each other. So what I'm saying is everything is a process. Everything takes time. ये
Right.
magic pill है नहीं life में. It's only here, है ना?
Right. So this is Vinny Vinu. He says, how did you deal with your parents? We can fight with the entire world, but fighting with our loved ones is the toughest.
So well said. The world actually in the end doesn't matter because you don't, while you live in the world, you can survive. But when your loved ones don't understand you, when your loved ones don't give the support, it is heartbreaking, right? I remember attending a session. Chitra Palekar, Amol Palekar, and Chitra Palekar. Their daughter is gay, and she came out to her parents, and the parents supported her. And one conversation I had with her, she said, "But I'm a mother. I am meant to love my child unconditionally." And that is the message. I keep thinking to myself, as parents, we have to love our children unconditionally. So where is the
Right.
question of that we should or we shouldn't? We should. If my children came to me and said to me that they were in love with somebody from the same sex, I would just love them because I am a mother, I'm a parent.
In raising children, in talking to friends, many times we ourselves may use labels. Has that ever happened to you unconsciously,
I'd
where
so
you
love
have
to,
done it?
Deepika, so love to believe that I am an absolutely a model parent. But I thank God I have 22-year-olds who remind me that I am not. you know, so for instance,
Right.
my son came up to me and said, I'm so fed up of you using this word on me that now I'm not going to do any work. So I said, what does
Okay.
it mean? Because I kept
Huh.
saying, you're so lazy, you're so lazy, you're so lazy. Over a period of time, he said, anyway, you've labeled me lazy. Now I don't want to do anything. But as parents, we do that so much. Don't be dumb. Say, don't be silly. This mindless words that come out of us without us understanding that how the other person reacts or feels about that particular thing is something that I think we should be mindful. That's all I say. I am very mindful, but I'm not a model parent. I wish I was.
What message do you have for people who want to stand up for themselves and other people?
We should all stand up. The Me Too movement actually has opened our eyes because we always think it's happening to somebody else, or what will people say if we stand up, or what will that person do to us? Because there are always people of power who do this. Mostly, and
Right.
I'm generalizing, but it's always people of power who think they can say something and they can get away with it. And you know what? They get away with it. And it's only lately I basically call them out. If somebody says anything in my presence, it took me a long time again. I call them out. I say, I'm sorry, I think this is not right. Or I walk away, but I make sure that I tell them how I feel. It is very important for us to stand up for ourselves and stand up for what we believe in. Because by laughing, by not commenting, we are actually basically adding to that comment. So what happens? This is how society gets formed, and this is how society then believes this is the right thing to do. It's an old boys club out there.
Right.
Women like us, if we do well, somebody said this some time back, and I hated that comment. Somebody said, oh, she's doing well because she's come up on her back. And I kept thinking, what does that mean? And I think, oh my God, is this really what you said?
Hmm.
You know, and I said, how shameful for you to even think like that. Now, I wouldn't have said that 20 years ago, but we
Mm-hmm.
have to stop people from
Right.
doing those things.
And has it ever backfired when you have done that? Like, you're in a setup where you're with clients or business partners.
Of course, sometimes it backfires. And, you know, like what we said earlier, it's okay for it to backfire. Do you not
Hmm.
need such people in your life anyway?
Kamal Kishore says, yes, we
Yeah,
rarely realize how complicit we are by not calling out
calling out.
misogyny. And it's even more shameful when sometimes women pull other women down. So, actually, that's an interesting thing you bring up, Chini Didi. It's something that, I often ignore because I hate to think that other women do that, but it is a fact that many times it happens. What is your comment about things like that?
You know, interestingly, there are both sides. Interestingly, there's a balance. While there are women who will pull each other down, there are also women who lift each other up. And I believe today, when I look back and I see what's happening right now, I think there are more women who lift each other up than women who bring each other down. The women who bring each other down, if you find them, ignore them. Let them find their own tribe. Because the tribe that we are creating, Deepika, amongst us and all your friends and fans who are here, this is the tribe we need to build each other. This is a beautiful tribe of people.
Yes,
And that's
yes.
what we need to focus on.
What is your children's take? They are from a completely different generation, right? Do they still, when they talk about people with a different sexual orientation or people who make choices otherwise also differently, do they use labels, or is this a thing of a generation before?
Well, they've been brought up by two mothers. You know, they
Hmm.
were 8 years old when I had Nicola in our life. They've been brought up by two
Hmm.
mothers. They come from a modern family.
Hmm.
They've studied in India, they've studied in New Zealand, they live in the UK.
Hmm.
It's a multicultural, it's a pot, it's a melting pot, right? They
Right.
don't understand these prejudices, they don't understand. When I said to them, you know, in the book, when I got my book published, I said, I know, now I've really come out publicly.
Hmm.
And my
Hmm.
children, actually, while they encouraged me, they couldn't understand what is this coming out business.
Hmm.
Because they said, you should just live your life the way, whether you're, you know, whatever color, whatever sexuality, whatever religion, whatever race, you should just be. You don't come out and say, I'm heterosexual. So why would you have to come out and say you're of a certain community? So
Right.
that is where there is an issue, right? You know, I'm sorry, and Deepika, another thing that I will point out to you
Yes.
that, you know, in
Yes.
India, one of the
Hmm.
biggest thing I see when we're having conversations with people and
Hmm.
say, I met you, and somebody will say, "Hey, well, who did you just meet? Yeah, who did you meet?" So typically in this country, they will say, "Oh, that person, she's an MC, she's an anchor, a trainer, she's an amazing human being, and you must meet her." So we'll talk about skills and your strengths.
Hmm.
इंडिया में ऐसे नहीं होता इंडिया में oh that girl no I'm not talking about you okay the way they'll describe me that girl that woman with short hair that gay woman you're talking about that lesbian who's wheatish complexion she left her husband for a woman oh this is how we'll talk the last thing they will talk about is that
Shameful. Yeah.
entrepreneur no but it is a fact
Yeah.
the way we think we will talk about every color hair makeup oh all they will say is she's so sexy yeah so beautiful you must meet her. This is how we describe. That man is so handsome. You will love him, yeah. He's the boss of this company. He's a marketing head. Superman. Arey, but is he good at his job? Will he do what he's supposed to do for his business? That
Right.
is the difference.
That's the difference. In fact, Sarita, so we have Sarita here, MC Sarita. She says attributing a woman's success to men or her looks is the most common common tool used to put
Her
a
down.
woman down.
I
Right.
agree.
Do you think some of these labels, like let's say feminist or the word activist, I'm sure you come across places where people have used them in a, oh, she's that feminist type, ye to activist
Yeah,
type
yeah.
hai. Do you think these are labels that people should start wearing with pride?
You know, I love this question. People these days call me a feminist and an activist. For years, I ran away from it thinking feminist is a condescending word. Oh my God, but it is not. It is basically owning your feminism, owning what you
Right.
stand for. And I stand for it with pride. I think we should all, as independent women who are basically kick ass women, we should wear that with pride. We are all activists, we are all feminists.
Is there a particular way in which we can use a word, right? let's say we're using the word gay or we're using the word bold or feminist, is there something we can think about in our head that will make us use the word to create a positive rather than a negative
They
impact?
just have to look at us, Deepika. Then they will know what
Right.
bold means. You know, the moment they said you said the word bold, you know what came to my mind was an old Bollywood dancer and beautiful actress, Helen. And they used to
Oh,
say, "Ore, she's so bold," which meant because
right,
she typically wore skimpy clothes and she danced and she did the cabaret, so they're bold.
right.
So Indian women, that
Uh-huh.
bold became synonymous with somebody who was a cabaret dancer. But actually, if you look at the Bollywood films, and I don't know why I'm talking about it, but she wore, while she looked like she didn't wear anything, she used to wear full, skin clothes. They were fully
Right,
covered those days, right? But
right.
bold meant Parveen Babi in a movie with Amitabh Bachchan, I can't remember that name,
Mhm.
dancing, cabaret dancer again, carrying a glass of wine. That was
Right.
bold. So what happened over time? We got this whole bold word became about women who drank, who wore skimpy clothes, and who did things outside the understanding of society. Okay?
Mhm, mhm.
That is not bold anymore. Bold is like us, independent, beautiful women who stand up for the rights that they stand for. We are kick
Right.
ass, we work really hard, and we are kind and we're compassionate people.
What is your opinion on alternative professions like, let's say, item dances in films or cheerleading or things like that? What message would you give out to people who want to take up alternative professions like
See,
that?
again, the word you use this word
Alternative,
twice,
I
alternative. You
know,
use
yeah,
that word twice.
right, right,
So I'm going to use the word unconventional, non-conformist. That's been
right.
labeled. I get labeled. You're so unconventional. You're eclectic. You're
Hmm,
eccentric. You're
hmm.
non-conformist. These are labels given to me. People don't understand it. That means so they will label it, and it is different. It's not alternative. It is a profession. Simple.
Right.
When I took up advertising 30 years ago, 29, 30 years ago, my mother refused to talk to me. She just refused to talk to me. My family thought, what the hell, you're a Catholic girl, you should be a secretary, a private assistant, what do you call PA to somebody. And here I was in advertising and they couldn't understand it. For them, it was too glamorous. I'm going to use the word too slutty 30 years ago.
Right.
Okay? So these are not alternative jobs. They are basically regular jobs, that professions that we choose.
Raga, have you ever had, fun at the expense of people who, let's say, like I use the word alternative right now, and I did it quite subconsciously. Like that, there are people who say things. Have you ever made a point in a fun way? Can you share an anecdote like that?
Oh my God, where do I start? I have had so many stories of, oh my God. Can I
In the
come back to
meantime,
it?
I'll read out
Yeah,
Sarita's
yeah.
comment. Lakshmi Rajaram says it's uniquely you and it's your choice. There's nothing alternative about it. While there's nothing wrong, Sarita says, while there's nothing wrong with unconventional careers, I feel the only thing that we need to do away with is male gaze on a woman's portrayal. Please
Yeah,
comment on that.
I'll comment on that, then I'll share the story, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
MC Sarita, it's a very interesting point that you've made here. I need to point out at this stage that there are some
Hmm.
amazing men around. So this is not about male bashing at all. Just because, we are women and we are a certain kind of women. I have some very close friends who are men and who are amazing men who show a lot of love, respect, and give dignity to the women in their life and friends like us. So there is that. I agree with you that we, unconventional is what when somebody is doing a item number, and the way we portray that, or the way we represent that is wrong. I wish, and I speak to a lot of my Bollywood friends, one that filmmakers and story writers, that I hope you change the narrative, that you don't show women in manner that is represented not representative of women. How many women you see on the road while you're walking doing item dance, and suddenly men sitting and drinking? That doesn't happen in real life. So why show that? Because those kind of lyrics, those kind of representation then create that kind of thinking for so-called men, and then that is the problem, right? So we need to stop there. I'll tell
Yes,
you a
the
story.
story.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I go
yeah.
through this whole thing quite a bit in your story. Okay, so once I remember, once I was at a pub having drinks with my friend, and we took a smoke break, and we were standing out. Three women and some men came along, and the men talked about, and they were just generally chatting, and then suddenly the men started talking. about each other. One said, I'm the CEO of this company, da, da, da. I said, okay, cool. And then the other said, oh, I am the head of this Asian region. So suddenly he was one step above this man. And the third man has suddenly 3 corporate jobs. And, so they were kind of showing off. And then they turned around and they asked my friends what they were doing. My one friend said, I'm a producer, film producer. The other said, what was she doing? They turned around, they asked me, what will you do? What do you do? So I said, oh, I'm a housewife. Today I made okra. And would you like the recipe for okra? Apparently it turned out really well. 2 minutes and they ran away. And so this is what it is. So it is if I had said to them what I really do, they would have stood there. They would have shared their whole journey with me and said, can you represent me to be a speaker? I can, right? But because I was
Right.
a housewife making okras, bhag gaye. So this is it. This is also same thing, right? This prejudices
Yes.
that people have. Now, if
Yes.
I'm a homemaker, I think I've got the most amazing job. We all know in this lockdown period, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
If they were really interesting men, they would have asked me, so how do you do this? How do you manage to run a home all day?
Hmm.
So women need to have a
Right.
label.
There are many times when I hear women saying things like, whatever a man can do, a woman can do it much better. Even a lot of men also say that. Why do women want equality? Because women are actually better. But sometimes I feel this is a way of, chadhawing you up the mooli ka jhaad so
Yeah.
that you will do everything.
Yeah.
What is your comment on things like this?
I have to give you, everything has to be with a practical answer, okay? I remember
Yeah.
I had lost heaps of weight. I was going to the gym and once I posted this really awesome photo of me doing like at the gym with this and heavy weights. And somebody posted saying that, wow, Raga, well done, congratulations. You look as strong as a man.
Huh.
And I said,
Uh-huh.
excuse
I
me,
see.
I am as strong as a woman. Why should I be as
Right.
strong as a man?
True.
And so
Absolutely.
this is common thing which we have to stop. Women also have to stop doing that. They say, yeah,
Right.
mera Mr. Na, you meet. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to do a
Huh.
stand-up comedy, but when you go
No,
for
no.
these get-togethers, they will first talk about my Mr. No, wo kitna ye karta hai, wo karta hai. But I didn't ask. I don't want to know your Mr. I want to know about you. You have your own
Right.
identity, right? So when you
Right.
introduce, no, when they get introduced, I'll say I'm Raga, and what about you? My
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Na is the head of telecommunication in Reliance, and no, 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 I don't care. Who are you? Then say,
Right.
"Arey, मैं तो homemaker हूँ." No, but who are you? Because we all give ourselves that identity that we think will impress. And sometimes you believe, as a homemaker, I will not be impressed. So I'll talk about my Mr. Okay, Sarita, have a question. Please go on.
Yes, Sarita has a question. As long as a woman on screen isn't being robbed of her autonomy and not being showing fragments as just objects of lust, do you think we're making progress in that department?
Oh my God. I think we are making progress because there are some fantastic new films that are coming out. I mean, there's a film like
Hmm.
Thappad, which I think took a little time for me to understand, but it's a lovely film. It shows there are a lot of such interesting films where we are showing. I'm trying to remember. I saw this Jawani Janeman just the other night
Right.
with Alia and Saif Ali Khan, and I thought, what a progressive film. They haven't shown women as
Hmm.
women. A man and a woman could be together. They can have a child out of wedlock. They one night stand perhaps, and it
Hmm.
doesn't matter. So
Right.
I think our narrative is changing, stories are changing, and we are actually living more real life, because it doesn't mean this didn't happen earlier.
Right.
It's just that we didn't
Right.
talk about it earlier.
Yeah. Shobna says if we don't start embracing ourselves completely, we may miss catching the labels thrown at us. An insight that just came up for me while listening to you both. Very, very pertinent point,
Wonderful,
right?
wonderful.
Okay, Sarita says, do you think we use labels as a defense mechanism to hide our own insecurities? Is it a subconscious thing that we do? Raga, could you
Sarita,
please take that?
100% agree with you. I think the more people give you labels, the more it is a reflection of how insecure they are. They have a very, and also very low self-esteem. When you have, see, they say that when you have interesting ideas, you talk about ideas because, and that's one kind of a person, a personality.
Right.
When you have nothing to say, you talk about people. If you're in the company of a person who is sharing, giving you labels, uske paas kuch nahi hai, there's no depth, run away from there.
We have why do people Shyam Prasad says why do people judge based on the way one dresses.
I think people judge because they believe that it is their right to judge. It's like power. It's your insecurity. It is your own fears. It is, that's why you judge. I can tell you there was this one person in New Zealand who judged me the most, who abused me the most about me coming out as a gay person. And later I got to know that that person has come out gay himself. It was a man. So, which means in hiding himself, he threw all his demons and all his insecurities at me. So, how did the society treat her? He used me as a, a guinea pig in a way. And then, so now I'm ready to come out.
Right.
So, remember, you don't know what people are going through.
Right. And I think that was a very pertinent question to be answered, because it helps us to disown those labels. When we know that the labels don't speak about us, but about the person giving us the label, I think it's easier to put a distance between them. Chini Didi, that's Lakshmi, she says, how do labels differ from your brand? These days there's so much talk about creating your brand. Can you comment?
Very, very good question. I would love to respond to that question. Coming from advertising, brand building is important. Brand building is also talked about as a personal brand. These days, personal brand. So it is important for you to know what do you represent. For me, people see me use, this is my signpost, frames, my two nose pins. So that's my outwardly brand. Inside brand, the brand I'm inside is I'm strong, I'm independent, I call myself compassionate, kind. I always do the things, I read a lot. I'm a writer. The stories that I share are the stories that I want people to know me as a brand. So that's the brand. That's your personal brand. What people call you are labels. How they identify you are the labels. That's the difference.
Right. Thank
Jairam,
you.
I agree. Labels can be projections. I
Label.
totally agree. Totally agree.
Yes. Sarita says, "It is it power that actually corrupts? It means, I mean, are we using the labels to gain power over another?"
Power is a most interesting concept. And, I'm going to talk about domestic violence because domestic violence
Yes.
has a lot to do with power, if you don't mind. I don't want to make it too
Yeah.
dark, this conversation. But these days, in the lockdown period, you would have seen that there is a huge rise in the violence, right? People are in small spaces, confined spaces, and suddenly, because of the way, the nature of a man's physical attributes and a woman is, it is mostly men against women, where women are the weakest, so weak, right? Physically, I'm talking about. So they get
Yeah.
bashed and there's domestic. So what is that about? What is domestic violence about? What is rape about? This is all about
Power.
power. So it is, what is the Me Too movement about? All about power. It's only people in power, they do that. I mean, just this morning I heard of a conversation with another friend of mine who talked about a person in power, even virtually, is doing these things, not to one person, to multiple women at the same time, but nobody's willing to call him out, because
Right.
if you call out such people, then your own life gets exposed. So I believe, Sarita, that power does corrupt, and power is the root cause, and that comes from ego. Imagine if we took that ego out, would there be power? And what is power? And if there's no power, would these people behave the same way that they're behaving now? I think things would change. But it is an illness. That's all I can say.
So there is one kind of judgment on a person who walks out of, say, a violent or an abusive relationship, but there is also another kind of judgment, which is of not taking any action.
I think everybody's journeys are different, right? So
Yes.
we have to allow other people to go through their own journeys. However, I have to share this that unfortunately for me, I have been not my ex-husband, so I have to give that disclaimer. Not my current partner, that's another disclaimer. In between the two relationships, I was in a relationship where there was a huge amount of physical abuse, emotional abuse, and violence, where
Right.
part of my nose is broken, and other parts of me, where I was so beaten up. I was in that relationship for 2.5 years. I didn't leave that relationship. That's story I've narrated in my Untold Lies as well as a small chapter. Now, I was financially independent. I had my own house. I had my own cars. I had my own space in society. Yet, I didn't leave that relationship, because what it does is they break you. Those kind of relationships break you inside, little bit at a time. They cause you
Right.
so much of embarrassment and pain and shame that you don't want to talk about it to anybody. And then people judge you when you talk about it. You got beaten, oh, they'll make fun of you, they'll ridicule you, they'll judge you. So women like me also suffer in silence until they cannot suffer anymore. So I'm an
Right.
example of having lived through that. So I don't think it's about, there was another conversation with someone else who said that domestic violence was about power. No, not power, it was about education. It's got nothing to do with education. It is to do
Right.
with a person who feels they have to show their power. And this conversation I had with someone else on another show that I did, and I'm sorry I'm answering you, it's a long answer,
Oh,
but
yeah, please. Yeah.
but Deepika, they said something really interesting. They said a man, let's assume it's a man who is causing domestic violence to a woman. A man goes to an office, to a workplace, to his clients, and this client is like really horrible to them. Or the people at work, our colleagues are really irritating. That's the word they use. No, she irritated me, so I slapped. They annoyed me, so I slapped. They didn't make my food right, so I slapped, hit. So imagine they do that in the work environment, but the man never ever slaps, right? They never punch, they never beat that person up till they get taken to the hospital. Why not? Because they know that there will be severe consequences to that action. They
Right.
can't show their power. Their power is the boss. The organization has the power over them, so they don't show their power. But at homes, they feel that they have the choice to show their power. And that choice, they abuse. And I wish people who are in these kind of toxic groups somehow find the strength not to justify and not to allow that power. Seek
Right.
help. Nothing will change. Nobody changes. Nobody changes.
Um, Siddhant Akshar, he says, hello, beautiful people. One of
Hello.
my closest friends, one second, got to know about my orientation and he stopped following me and removed me from his social media. So, what do you think will help to change their mind?
Well, do you want to change their mind? That's the first thing. Do you want this person who has basically ghosted you to come back into your life when you need that person? So that's the first question you should ask yourself. Now, if the relationship is so critical for you and so important that you do want them to come back into your life and you do want them to understand your sexuality, then you reach out and you say that, hey, I want to talk about, I believe, because you're making an assumption as well, right? I believe that may have caused you to go away from me. I would like to talk about it. And then you can sit and have a conversation. Maybe you will be able to change their mind. I guarantee you it's not going to happen. They will come to that realization in their own time.
Sham Prasad says, is it because more of traditions are being followed in India, like not in other countries, is causing violence as they can't just go out of a relationship, out of relation, flaring into society? Do you think it's tradition that stops people?
No, I don't know whether you're aware that domestic violence is not restricted to India. The percentage of violent cases, domestic abuse cases, is equally high in other parts of the world, whether it is
Yeah.
the US, whether it is the UK, whether it is Europe, anywhere in the world, the violence, the cases are really high. So it's got nothing to do with tradition. It is to do with social conditioning. It is to do with patriarchy and how we've been brought up to believe that men are the stronger sex, or and I'm not saying it's only men who do it to women. There are also women who do it to men, women who do it to each other. We're talking also, we're not only talking about intimate relationships, Deepika, we're also talking
Yes.
about parents who abuse their children, children who abuse their
Absolutely.
parents. So
Yeah.
this is completely, it's a circus of
Right.
domestic violence. Yeah. So it's got
Ah,
nothing to do with
yeah.
tradition. It is just to do with individuals.
Yes. And also, violence can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be
Yes.
financial. There are
Yes.
different kinds of violence.
Absolutely correct. The
Yes.
violence, which is the worst, is the emotional kind of violence, where you can't see
Yes.
the signs, the physical signs, right? Or somebody
Right.
saying that I'm going to take the children away from you. Or if you do
Right.
this, I will not give you money, financial, economic violence, right? So those
Right.
kind of things you can't see. You feel, where does a woman go?
Siddhant says, I do want to change the perception towards everyone of my kind, and I have some questions to ask you both. I couldn't ask anyone about them till today. I hope you guys don't mind. No, not at all, Siddhant. Please go right ahead. Lakshmi Rajaram, she says, what a great conversation, so engaging and informative, Deepika and Raga both. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Raga, there is also the thought that people who are violent are in themselves quite upset or ill about many things, and that therefore these people stay in those relationships to sort of help them overcome that. What is your take on that kind of view?
But you're right. You're right. It's such like when I was in that kind of a violent relationship, I can only speak from my own experience because I'm no expert in this subject.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's like when they are abusive, the next thing that they do when they know that they've crossed the limit, they will bring
Hmm.
you flowers and they'll bring you chocolates and they'll bring you hope. I promise this will never happen again. It's always a cycle until it happens again. So the
Right.
person who is the victim and the persecutor, it's constant. It's like a drama. It's like a dance between the
Drama.
them. And that at some
Right.
point that dance has to either come in balance, or if there's too much of imbalance, you have to stop dancing. You have to find another partner, and
Partner.
that partner could be yourself. You don't have to find another physical partner. I mean, sometimes you have to find yourself. And I think that when it changed for me, Deepika, is when one day I sat. Well, no, of course I was physically totally bashed up, and I thought to myself, it's time for me to love myself. I am loving this person so much for not getting anything in return. All I get is this, and I get maybe 1% every 3-4 days. I might get some flowers, but 4 days in a week I get beaten up. Okay,
Right.
I don't need this in my life. I need to find that love for me, and that's when I realized that first self-love, it's so important. It is not selfish. So
Right.
important. And when you
Yes.
love yourself, Deepika, truly love yourself, that is when you will not allow these labels, you will not allow
Yes.
this abuse, you'll not allow any kind of toxicity in your life.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a very important, nobody else is going to rip the labels off of us. It's we who have to accept ourselves and rip those labels off ourselves. So loving ourselves is crucial. So we
Correct.
have some more questions. Sarita says, do you think people are good or bad, or their actions are situational? And do you think that everybody deserves a second chance?
Well, I don't know whether people are good or bad. I think inherently, I have been told, I'm a Catholic girl, that everybody is good. Okay, so I want to believe that and I keep that faith because I think the day I lose that faith, I think it will be time for me to go. So I think people are good. Now, second chance, I don't know about first, second, third chance. I only know that do you believe that this is right for you? That's the question you have to
Yeah.
ask yourself. Not about, it's nothing to do with the other person. We have to stop focusing so much on the other person. Is the person doing the right thing, not right thing for us? Is
Hmm.
this right for me? Is this causing me pain? Is it consistently changing the person that I am?
Right.
Right? If it changes you, you're changing, then there's no second, third, fourth chance. Just get out. I say the best thing you should do is wear trainers all the time when in a toxic relationship. Run.
Right. Yeah. I sort of second that, human beings are inherently good. Some of the things we do maybe, you know, may come across as good or bad, and it's up to us to make the choice for what's best for us. I totally second that. Lakshmi Rajaram says one has to self heal their
Deepika,
own inner.
so,
Yes.
Deepika, there was
Yeah.
someone who had made a comment earlier, and I don't remember. It says that we are human, and I know that was in context to how people judge us and
That was
behave around
Lakshmi
us.
Rajaram. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just saying
Yeah.
that is another thing that I sometimes reflect on. I don't know whether what I'm saying is right or wrong. I reflect on this part as well. This, do we justify so much of things that are not right in our lives by putting it into a box and saying, but after all, we're human? Do we justify other people's wrongdoings by saying, but we are human after all? So should we at some point stop back, look back or stop and say to ourselves, what is a human? You know, I am human. I would never hurt anybody. I would never want to, you know, gain somebody's confidence and then break it, for instance. But in the guise of being human, we allow those kind of things to happen in our lives. So I think each one of us should have a parameter. This is my benchmark. This is the parameter that I will judge for me. Because, after all, we are just hurting ourselves.
Right. Champrasad says, thank you for answering patiently, Raga. Siddhant says, I don't want to change the people's perception towards everyone of my kind. My heart goes out to him. Raga, do you want to say something to Siddhant?
So what's he saying? Sorry, he's saying that he doesn't want to
He's
change
saying
perception. I couldn't.
he wants to change. So this is the same person whose friend
I know. I
unfollowed
remember.
him.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So he wants to change the perception of people towards people like himself, he says.
You know, all I say is share stories. And I really believe in it that, we change the narrative one story at a time. We can't, I find that when I sit with somebody and try and explain to them, it doesn't happen that suddenly think, oh, I was, sorry, ungay, now I'm going to be pro-gay. ये नहीं होता है. That is not, this is not, our life is not Bollywood or Hollywood, right?
Right.
It's real life. So what you do is you share stories like mine, yourself. There are beautiful stories around. That becomes the change. That brings in the change. Bollywood brings in change. Books beautifully written bring in change. Theater brings in change. Creative arts bring in change. What we say in front of people bring in change. Conversations like this bring in change. But everything will happen in time, Siddhant, and I really know that you want this to change for you, and it will change for you. Your intent is really good, but don't force it. Let it happen organically.
So there is one school of thought that says that if you want to bring about the change, you've got to be part of the system, right? Now, this being part of the system it means that you are negotiating. What is your take on that?
Well, we all do this in life, right? So like you want to pass an exam, so you will do a lot of research, you'll prepare for it very well, and then you will make some mistakes here and there, and then you'll try and give the right answer. And life is like that. Life is like you have to keep, it's trial and error. You make what we call in India, right? I'm going to use, because I'm so Indian, adjustment. Adjust karo yaar.
Ah,
I have, there was an even
Sulpa adjustment.
underwear ad made on this. Adjust career. Sorry, it's my favorite line, favorite ad. Like we as a society will promote it. Adjust karo yaar, and we believe that in that adjusting, that we will be able to get buy-in from people. That's what you're talking about.
Right.
You're talking about how
Yes,
to get buy-in,
absolutely.
right? How to get
Yeah,
buy-in.
yeah,
In getting buy-in,
yeah.
we will do hard sell. We will manipulate. Bhakti Shinde talked about some point about manipulation. So manipulation, it
Yes.
becomes manipulative. I would love to see, and I know I'm an idealist, people call me that. Deepika, I would love to see a world where we don't have to manipulate, we don't have to buy the buy-in. That
Right.
I have a conversation with you and say, this is what I would like. You ask, I have an adult conversation with me, we have logic, rational, and then we come to a clear point, yes or no.
Mm.
I would love that world. I hope that world happens.
That word adjust in Bangalore, it's very popular. Sulpa adjust Madi.
Salpa,
And
just Madi.
yes, if my grandmother at home calls another woman adjusting, it's like the high point of praise, because for that generation of women, if a woman can adjust, that's it. Life is like sorted.
I was sorry, I was married into a Punjabi family, beautiful family. I will have nothing. I mean, they're the most wonderful family that I've been a part of. But they used to always tell me, because when I went to Ambala, where my ex came from, I had to cover my head initially, and they used to say, "क्या बहू है, क्या adjust करती है?" It used to irritate the hell out of me. Then I would stop. क्या मतलब if I didn't do it, that means I was not a good bahu. Because I adjusted, I became a good bahu. So
Right.
these things are basically, I don't know where it comes from, just to make people feel good, I think.
Yes. Yes. Thank
Great.
you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you very much, Raga.
I have
And guys,
really enjoyed.
yeah,
I
me too.
enjoy, I love you, Deepika. I have to say that I've always been a big fan of yours. I remember when I first came to Hyderabad, we both went for a drink, and I think we finished a bottle of
Yes,
wine between us.
yes.
And I
And I could
loved my
not
time.
believe that Raga was the mother of two grown-up children.
Yes.
Yes, it
No,
was wonderful.
so it's been amazing. Thank you, and thank you for all of you who participated and engaged with us. And I hope we were able to respond to you the best way we could. And thank you for indulging me. I just say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Raga. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.